Hey, Derek, who's our next contestant? Harold Landry III, step right up. You're the next contestant on How Will the Detroit Lions Fix Their Pass Rush? And you were just granted permission to request a trade. Will the Detroit Lions trade for you? We'll find out. Stay tuned. The Detroit Lions are in desperate need of a pass rush, and we heard what Brad Holmes had to say at the press conference yesterday at the Combine, that it is quite difficult to get two elite pass rushers. Well, one might have just dropped in his lap. And I mean that in the best possible way. This is coming from Adam Schefter. Says the Titans have granted permission to former Pro Bowl linebacker Harold Landry to seek a trade, per sources. Landry started all 17 games last season, finishing with 71 tackles, 9 sacks, 18 pressures, and 4 pass deflections. The 28-year-old Landry has 31.5 sacks in the last 3 seasons he has played and is due for a $17.5 million base salary this season. Now, I want you to keep that number in mind because we talked about with the press conference from yesterday and Brad Holmes. We know what he's looking for. We know he doesn't like to spend any money. We also heard from Andrew Berry that Myles Garrett is off the table right now, that they have no intentions as of February 26th to trade Myles Garrett in any capacity. Now, I know that Harold Landry is listed as a linebacker, and we could use a certified edge rusher. There's no doubt about that. However, if Brad Holmes doesn't want to break the bank, he doesn't want to sell the farm, and he doesn't want to necessarily, he wants to go maybe a pay grade above Khalil Mack and a soon-to-be released Joey Bosa, Harold Landry could be the ideal fit. Now, of course, we would have to give up some trade capital. I could see Harold Landry, having to only give up a first-round pick for him. Maybe the Detroit Lions could put that into the 2026 NFL season. Let's take a look at his stats for the past couple of years. We've talked about this guy at the trade deadline. All of this stuff, isn't it funny now that the offseason is here? The same people we were talking about during the trade deadline are the same people that we hear that are getting traded or about to be. 6'2", 252. So he is not the prototypical edge rusher size, but we know that he rushes the passer as a linebacker. 28 years old, he'll be 29 to start the season. So he's younger than Khalil Mack by multiple years. There's a lot of pluses to trading for Harold Landry as opposed to just signing Khalil Mack. I wouldn't be mad if we signed somebody else, one of these kind of lower tier guys or maybe a cheaper guy to help with the depth. Drafted in 2018, 41st pick in the second round, and is going into what appears to be his, 7th, 8th season, I believe it is. Went over his stats, had 9 sacks last year. Again, we went into this guy great detail at the trade deadline because his name was a big deal. And don't forget, he had a connection at the time between our defensive line coach with Tyrell Williams and the Detroit Lions, because Terrell, I keep calling him Tyrell Williams used to coach the defensive line for the Tennessee Titans when Vrabel was there, and then came to the Detroit Lions and now has rejoined Vrabel in New England. So the guy is mostly healthy. As a matter of fact, according to this, in the 2020 season, that was the last year of the 16-game season. That was the first year of the expanded playoffs. So according to this, Harold Landry has only missed 1 game in his NFL career. So he might not be on Brad Holmes' radar because he's relatively healthy. Coming off of the past 3 seasons is ridiculous. You're talking about 12 sacks 3 years ago, 10.5. So the guy can get pressure. The Detroit Lions were a blitzing team. We really couldn't get there with 4. I would expect if we are not going to be able to get that front 4, that those front 4 could get to the pass rusher, that Harold Landry would be a nice addition to the team. Now, here's why this could be very intriguing. When you're talking about a pass rusher, Harold Landry is ideal. The salary cap is going up $22 to $26 million. We will learn that in a few weeks, probably a few days after the Combine week, but before free agency. check this out. And this is the part that could really appeal to the Detroit Lions. The Tennessee Titans had a potential out after last season. Harold Landry is only making $17.5 million base salary. If you look at pass rushers, that is on the cheaper side of the majority of these pass rushers. You got a guy like Trey Hendrickson. He's making 14 plus, I believe, but he's probably going to get an extension. With that, he's going to get a raise. Then you have a Myles Garrett. You have a Max Crosby. They're making about $20 million coming up this season. Harold Landry, and this will give you room to extend Aiden Hutchinson, which we know that the Detroit Lions have already spoken about. So I could 100% see the Detroit Lions doing this. This right here, I think this is a little rich for Brad Holmes' blood, especially based off what he said yesterday. But here's the way that I'm looking at it. And I know he's not a prototypical edge. I understand that. But the dude gets to the quarterback. There's no doubt about it. And we can draft that prototypical edge in 2020 in this year's draft. Whether Brad wants to trade up or take somebody, whoever's sitting there at 28, we can draft that guy. We could trade for a Harold Landry III. We could draft somebody, because what I would try to do is I would try to push the first round pick off to next year. That's what I would do. It's still probably going to be in the late round. That's what I would do. And I would try to keep this first round pick to bolster the pass rush. I would let the first round pick for next year play out. He's got 2 years on his deal. So not only can you get Aiden Hutchinson's deal done, you would have 2 years. You would have 2 salary cap increases to keep a guy like Harold Landry, because we're not talking about an extension. If he gets traded, we're not talking. There is not even an extension on the table. If I'm whoever trading, I'm trading. If I'm trading for this guy, we're not even discussing an extension until after next season. So what I would do, and I told you guys before, we got a few guys that we're worried about this year. We've got Hutch, we've got Kirby. Those are the 2 deals that need to get done. Next year, you might be talking about, because I don't think Jamison Williams is going to get extended. So not this year. Next year, you're having a Jamison Williams discussion. Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, now you're going into those guys. But Harold Landry, this is the perfect, outside of him not being the prototypical edge, this is kind of the perfect deal, because you could probably get Harold Landry for 1 first. Or maybe a first and a player, a first and a late round pick. Maybe you get Harold Landry and one of the Tennessee Titans late round picks as well. So as far as capital and compensation, Harold Landry would be probably the best deal, because Trey is older, I believe, not by a lot, but you have Trey. He's going to want an extension. He's also going into the last year of his deal, like some other defensive ends that we're talking about. Now, what I could see is somebody like, if the Detroit Lions, let's take Myles Garrett out the equation, because he's going to be a tough get. If the Detroit Lions if they traded for Harold Landry, I would be cool with that, because I understand Myles Garrett is going to be, if the Cleveland Browns decide they're going to part ways with him, he's going to be a unicorn. You're going to have to battle every other team. There's no guarantee he even wants to come here. So Harold Landry, if we have, and the Lions know of him, they know 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that there was some discussion between the Detroit Lions and Terrell Williams at the time when he was our defensive line coach about this guy, especially leading up to the trade deadline. He wasn't available. Now he is. So I could see Brad Holmes. If Brad Holmes went to do this, could I see him do it? I don't know. We already have Zadarius Smith on the roster. They're talking about cutting him and re-signing him. But if Brad Holmes did this, I would be happy. If he went and got Harold Landry, we traded Harold Landry, I think they're going to want a first for him. I would give 1 first for him. I'm not giving 2. I'll give you 1. I'll give you 1 first, maybe a late round pick. You give me Harold, maybe a late round pick. I give you that. Maybe I give you a first and the compensation 3rd for Aaron Glenn, because we get 1 next year as well. And maybe you give me Harold Landry and one of the picks that you have. It would have to be after the 3rd round, maybe 5th. Harold Landry and a 5th for you give me Harold Landry and a 5th, I give you a 1st and a 3rd, something like that. We'll see. But this is kind of the perfect fit. If they went and got Harold Landry, they traded for Harold Landry, they signed a guy like Khalil Mack, a guy like Bosa. They brought back Marcus Davenport for depth, because we're going to need depth. I don't mind the depth pieces. It's those starters that I'm worried about. So maybe you can get because if you bring in Harold Landry, he plays the linebacker role, but he kind of rushes the passer. So I'm trying to figure out where exactly you would put him with what the Lions run, but I'm sure you can figure it out. But you could still get a guy like Khalil Mack. You could still get a guy like Joey Bosa when he gets cut. You could still get one of these kind of mid to lower tier pass rushers to help the depth, right? So maybe you could even get somebody in the draft because if you brought in Harold Landry, because I'm thinking you're not going to put Landry on the line. I just don't. Maybe you stand him up. So I don't know how you would incorporate him in because we need that prototypical DE. But Brad Holmes already said the other day, like, this stuff is scarce. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to have to figure something out. But I can see this happening again. The dude, even though he's on the smaller side when it comes to defensive end, he doesn't play defensive end. You also have to remember, too, when it comes to the compensation, the defensive ends, they make a bunch of money. I think linebackers might make a little less, but you look at, when you think about Harold Landry, think about a Brian Burns, think about a Kayvon Thibodeau, think about one of those guys. And Brian Burns, I mean, these are guys who can get to the quarterback. And quite frankly, if you have a guy that can get to the quarterback and he's available, you got to make room for him. The Detroit Lions got to make room for him. So figure it out. You know what I'm saying? We don't know if Derek Barnes is coming back. We don't know what's happening, right? Who's going to be the linebackers? We've got Alexander Zaloni, Jack Campbell. So we'll figure it out. But Brad Holmes has no choice but to figure it out. But I wouldn't be mad if we went and got this guy 2 years, very affordable, gets to the quarterback. I mean, like I said, if we're looking at what he brings to the table, it's kind of ridiculous. I think personally, this would be a steal for the Detroit Lions. I really do. If we were to give you a first and figure it out. I don't know what pick. Maybe I'm just throwing a third out there. Maybe the Tennessee Titans have the first overall pick, right? So they're going to probably take a quarterback. I don't know. Sweeten the pot. Maybe throw Hendon. Maybe you give us, I don't know. Maybe you give us Harold Landry. We give you Hendon Hooker. We give you a first and Hendon. You give us Harold and a fifth or something like that. I'd take even a six, man. And the reason why I said how Hendon could go over there, maybe you don't want to throw your rookie right out there. It's not like the Tennessee Titans are going to be world beaters year one under a rookie guy. Or maybe they don't even want that pick because they have been taking calls on the first overall pick. So that's a way that we can send Hendon Hooker over there. The Malik Willis experiment didn't work. The Will Levis experiment didn't work. Maybe you don't want to risk another quarterback failure, so you trade for Hendon. You throw Hendon Hooker in a trade. You let him get some playing time. Maybe you scout your guy for Hendon Hooker is under the contract for 2 years, so you could get a guy this year, let him sit behind. If your guy's not coming out the draft this year, you get a guy next year, let him sit behind, and then you worry about that when the time comes. I don't know, but let me know what you think in the comments below. I definitely, based on Brad Holmes and his kind of conversation, I think this would be like the richest he would go for any type of person to get to the quarterback. This is a little rich for 17.5. That's rich, but that's fair. That is fair. And for a guy like Harold Landry, that's 100% fair. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. This channel is made possible by viewers, subscribers, and members just like you. You can be anywhere else on YouTube, but you choose to rock with me. Members, if you are a director tier member, I update the list every month. So when on the first of the month, I update the list. I remove the members that's no longer there and add the new ones. All right. So if you don't see your name, it will come on the first of the month. I am going to the NFL Combine tomorrow, which is Thursday, the 27th. So that's where I will be. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.